Alrighty guys, a bit of a different one today. I'm going to be talking about why I didn't choose the CFMOTO 450MT. Fantastic bike. It really set fire to the small adventure bike market scene and just set off this whole new golden era of amazing adventure bikes. So as good as it is, as much value as it has, why oh why didn't I choose one as my small adventure bike? So let's get into the 5 things that ultimately made me decide not to get the CFMOTO 450MT. Okay, let's start by saying this. I really enjoyed the CFMOTO 450MT when I got to do the test ride. It was the bike that got me thinking, maybe I should get a small adventure bike. It was the first small adventure bike I thought where they'd really got the package right. It was just a smaller version of a Tenere 700, which is what everyone wanted, and at a significantly cheaper price. So they got the value, the specifications, and the look right. And that's the first time all 3 of those things have been together with a small adventure bike with an engine that you could really enjoy. Because of that 270-degree crank, it sounded fantastic as well. Never have we seen a package like that on the small adventure bike market. And I agonized over whether to get one or not. I really went back and forth and drove everyone around me crazy trying to figure it out. But I ultimately chose the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450 behind me. I also obviously tested the Triumph 400X, which is also behind me, but I went with the Himalayan 450. But we're here to talk about why I didn't choose the CFMOTO 450MT. And that little monologue was just to show you it was a close thing. I think it is a fantastic bike. So let's get into why I didn't choose the CFMOTO 450MT. First one for me, and it's a highlight for a lot of people, is the suspension. The suspension is fantastic, but it's also razor edged in its focus. So the KYB fully adjustable, which is a shocker at this end of the spectrum, is really competent at riding pretty aggressively off-road. Once you turn up the wick and you're really riding hard, this suspension comes into its own. But what I found as a rider that tends to poodle along a lot more than riding it hard, as I said, I'm a dadventure rider. I take it slow. I don't have the best skills. The suspension is tuned for that harder riding, so it's really harsh if you're just putting along and wanting a comfortable ride off-road. And I thought to myself, I could live with that, update it later down the line with some tuning, but do I really want to throw money into the suspension with a value-orientated adventure bike? And I found myself with the answer of thinking, not really. I just wanted to kind of buy it and have the suspension be good straight out of the box. And while the suspension is good with its adjustability, it can't be adjusted out the harshness of that suspension, which is great when you're riding hard, but for everything else, I found it a little bit tiresome and quite rock hard and jittery. I also wanted something that had a bit of a retro vibe to it. And of course, the CFMOTO 450MT is a fantastic looking adventure bike, but it's very modern looking. It's very Tenere-esque. A lot of people call it a mini Tenere or the Temu Tenere, and I think that's a really apt description. And I think it really appeals to the general adventure crowd, but that really wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for something a little more subtle and more of that retro vibe. And I didn't feel like the CFMOTO really answered that. I did like the look of it, but it just feels a little same. If you line up all the popular adventure bikes, it all feels like they're designed by the same person. There really isn't too much to really differentiate them from everything else. They lack a little bit of creativity and they just copy each other because it's a safe bet. And the CFMOTO, it's the smart move because it's the popular look and everyone wants to look like each other. But I'm a bit of a weirdo. I'm happy to stand out and I want a bike that's a little bit different as well. So that's why I scratched it off the list. But I will say, if you're looking for the adventure bike look, it's got it in spades and it looks the part. The The next one I'm going to get a bit of crap for, and that's just how loud this bike is. It sounds fantastic. I love the sound of that 270-degree parallel twin. Particularly, it sounds way bigger than the motor size that it actually is. It's such a good sounding bike, and I think that captivates a lot of people too, because that's part of the emotive connection with a motorcycle. If it doesn't sound good, if you don't like the sound of it, then that is a big part of if you like the bike or not. Whether we admit it or not, a great sounding bike is going to win our hearts 9 times out of 10, and it sounds fantastic. My problem with it is that it's too noisy, both in its stock form. It's not too bad at low RPMs, but when you're sitting out on the highway at high speeds and you've got the drone of that exhaust hour after hour, it really starts to wear away at you. Particularly if this thing has a pipe, it really is a loud engine. It's just too fatiguing, and I don't want to do any more damage to my hearing than I've already done from my hedonistic days in my early 20s. So I want to keep my hearing as good as it can be. Next up was the off-road feel. I actually really liked how this went off-road. It's pretty damn competent, particularly as I said, as you increase the speed and the suspension starts to come into its own. The engine as well has a really nice bottom end, nice little torquey hit, so it's quite good at slower speeds, and it feels very confident, inspiring, because it's got that 21-inch front wheel. It all feels very familiar, decent amount of travel, and a good rider triangle when you're standing up on the bike. It all feels very natural, very competent, like any other fairly dirt orientated adventure bike. But it didn't quite feel like home, and I'll be honest, it's just personal preference. I spend most of my time in the dirt on dual sports, so that's my happy place. Single cylinders, skinny, they have a very different feel to an adventure bike off-road. Nothing against the competence of this bike off-road. I think it's fantastic, but fit and feel and the confidence that a bike gives you is a big part of off-road riding, at least for me. And the Himalayan 450 just had that dual sport feel, obviously, and it felt much more natural, whereas this just felt like an adventure bike for me, as it should, but I'm more comfortable with a dual sport feel off-road. So I found myself feeling a little more awkward on the CFMOTO 450MT. My preference is more of a dual sport feel out of an adventure bike, which sounds really dumb with me saying it, but it's true. So bikes like the Tenere 660, I really gravitated to, the KLR 650, the GE650 GS Sertau, those quasi dual sport adventure bikes. That's my comfortable place when I'm on an adventure bike. The parallel twins and up, I always feel a little bit out of sorts because it's more in my head, it's just not quite as natural for me off-road. The fifth and final reason was the engine. Now don't get me wrong, this sounds great. It also has a very nice bottom end, which really serves it well off-road in particular. But as good as it sounds and as nice as it is off-road, on-road, which admittedly is where we're going to spend a lot of time as well, it really isn't as engaging as some of the other offerings when you're belting around on the road. The power is very linear and very progressive, so you don't get any sense of a rush or any kind of excitement other than the sound of the engine. It's a very progressive and predictable power delivery. Great for the learners, great for predictability, as well as being great sounding, but it never gives you that rush, that feeling of the power hitting you. Even though it makes a little amount of power, it's still nice when you get that hit, and it's really fun and engaging. It's not the worst motorcycle in the world, it just didn't stand out to me like a few other bikes in the small adventure bike market did. Particularly the two bikes behind me, both I find are far more engaging to ride on the road. So while I think it's decent enough, it sounds great, and it's certainly up to the task of hauling you along on the open road or off-road or wherever it is you're going, it isn't the most engaging engine to ride, at least dynamics-wise. It's a very linear and progressive progression of power and speed. And it feels a little bit like you're fizzling out at the top end as well. If you are the owner of a CFMOTO 450MT, or you're an appreciator of the 450MT and you're in the fetal position crying right now because I've just bashed the crap out of your bike, I apologize. I really do like the bike a lot, and I certainly wouldn't argue if one turned up in my garage tomorrow. It's that good of a bike. But just the nitty gritty is what it comes down to in the small adventure bike market, because all of them are so closely matched and they all do great things. You find yourself having to find reasons like this to really separate them. There really are pithy little first world problems, all of these that I've listed off. But that's the reality of it. In order to separate it, you've really got to break down what you truly need and what you truly love out of a motorcycle, and that will bring the obvious choice to the top. And it was just those minor details that really put the CFMOTO 450MT on the back burner for me. But I'd love to know your thoughts. What did you love about the 450MT? Do you think I'm a little bit mad? The answer is probably yes. Don't worry, I'm okay with it. I'm well aware. Or were you like me? Were there a few things that really irritated you about the 450MT that you just couldn't live with? Chuck your thoughts down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, don't forget to stay shiny side up.